All right, we're live. How are you, Dan?
Good. How are you, Alex?
Good. I'm excellent. I'm going to give you a proper introduction, but first, I wanted to go. You're a big coffee fan. What is the coffee mug that you have today?
This is my Tijuana Republic coffee mug, because I work in Tijuana often, both with Altrui and as a volunteer doing refugee border work, and so makes me kind of feel like I'm at home when I'm with this cup.
Interesting. I want to get into a little bit of your work in Tijuana, but I want to give you a proper introduction to Dan. Today, my guest is Dan Hanley. Dan, after leaving a military career in the Navy, Dan worked in the hotel industry, managing with brands such as Hilton and the Hyatt. After a background in the service industry, he received an opportunity in his first development role at Boulder County AIDS Project. From there, Dan has been leading development teams for over 15 years, and now as a consultant at his own firm and a founder at his own consulting firm, Altrui, for the past 13 years or 3 years. Sorry. So Dan, welcome.
Thanks, Alex. I'm so grateful to be here with you.
Yeah, I'm grateful to be here. Anything I missed? Was that a pretty good broad overview?
Yeah, definitely. Altrui is 2.5 years old. It's only 6 months, but I have to wait for what we look like at 3, so I don't want to rush it.
Okay. And let's go into a little bit how we met each other. I mean, we met each other through social audio, and I reached out to Dan in hopes of a collaboration, and he reached back out, and we did a job summit about a year ago in early June on Clubhouse, and we kind of talked about the jobs market and hope to match people who, for whatever reason, has lost a job in the pandemic, from nonprofits downsizing to new opportunities in the industry. And I consider you my friend, and I look forward to the day that we meet face to face. And so let's get into a little bit of fundraising talk and nonprofit talk. First, talk to me. Well, I'm interested in your story. You got the opportunity to work as the director of development in Boulder at the Boulder County AIDS Project. How did you get that opportunity? And then how did you once you started, how did you get the fundraising bug?
Sure. So I going about my life, I get an email from a friend of mine who works there at Boulder County AIDS Project, who's asking me to share with my Rolodex that there's this open position there at BCAP. And I said, sure. And so I looked at it, director of development in Boulder, which was about 45 minutes to an hour north of where I lived and worked. And then the next day he called and asked if I might be interested in the position. And my immediate response is no. I like making money, or I like doing whatever I'm doing now. And you're in Boulder, and I've never done that position. The whole long list of excuses started coming out. And then after a really brief conversation with my husband, when he reminded me that my best friend and my housemate, many people I love, lost their lives to HIV/AIDS, and it was something that I was super passionate about, maybe I should consider it. So I did. I interviewed with my friend who was the CFO, and I interviewed with the executive director and other team members there. And I soon discovered that I wanted to be a part of that. And so I was offered the position and I took it. And everything was a learning experience because I had never worked for a nonprofit. I had a little bit of experience with fundraising because there were a couple of animal rights groups I was involved with that I had planned special events for and done some fundraising with, but never, that was always like a side hustle, never as my full-time position. And I would say the bug hit me within a week. And within a week, I was like, wow, these people that I work with every day commit their lives to support people living with HIV/AIDS, to prevent HIV/AIDS, which are two things that to me are making the world a better place. And I fell in love with the people I was working with, whether they were people I would hang out with or not. I just loved their passion of what they were doing at BCAP.
Yeah, and so it was very fulfilling, I imagine, joining and that immediate impact that you get when you're generating revenue and making an impact in a small nonprofit. Did you have a team early on, or was it just you?
It was not me. I mean, I would consider at BCAP, I would consider the executive director as part of the team. We had a small but growing development committee that were part of the team. And then on staff, there was a grant writer and an events person.
Okay. And you mentioned it, and that was an interesting kind of revelatory statement that you said the executive director is part of the team, part of the fundraising team. Talk to me a little bit about, and I know you've been in several other positions and now working with nonprofits, many nonprofits in Southern California, mainly Southern California and Tijuana.
Mm-hmm.
But talk to me a little bit about, I guess, your philosophy of managing the team, of managing a team of people, and managing, kind of that phrase, managing up. So managing the executive director or managing sideways, somebody that's your colleague, that's your peer, rather than a direct report.
Sure. So for me, it was and has been a constant leadership learning constantly. I'm constantly learning, both back then and now today, on things I can do, actions I can take, things I don't have to do, or maybe shouldn't do, although I don't like that word, in leadership. For me, especially now where I'm also in the position of supporting clients in hiring, I find that hiring the right people is super important. So if you in our world of nonprofit fundraising, the lifespan of a job is not very long compared to other jobs, and so what can we do as leadership to ensure that the person we're hiring today is going to be around in a couple of years? And I don't mean, there's many things we don't have control over. They may move, their partner or spouse may get promoted and they have to move, or they have to do something. They may want to start a family or not start a family and go somewhere. They may want to seek another opportunity. But even then, in that case, I think there's still an opportunity to keep them. But there are things that you have no control over. The things that you do have control over is to really look at hiring right when you have that opportunity. As a director of development or chief development officer, you are going to inherit a team that you had nothing to do with in hiring. And that may present its own challenges. For me, I've learned, and I speak from deep experience with this, that when I hop into a team, the first thing I really need to do, and I haven't done this all the time, is to listen. Is really listen to people's challenges, listen to why they work there, kind of get a feel for, do they really want to be there, or is this just a job? Because for me, I really want to work with people who really want to be there. and who may not excel in what they do, but are on the path to excelling for what they do. And I firmly believe that as a chief development officer, vice president of development, director of development, whatever you call it, in conjunction with my boss, the executive director or CEO, it's our responsibility to ensure that our team succeeds, and that we do everything in our power to ensure that they're going to be successful. So it's very easy to say, for example, you have to make this $500,000 budget for the gala. I can say, Alex, this is your budget. You have to raise this much. And then just walk away, right? Which happens in a lot of nonprofits. Or, which I choose to do is have consistent meetings with that person, bring in the CEO or ED, bring in the gala committee, and really be there as a huge team whose interest is not only to have a successful gala, but to create success for the person who's planning the gala. And you can flip in anything you want. You can flip in a direct mail campaign, a marketing strategy, anything like that. But many times we see the CEO or executive director just drop the person in, then there's really no support, but good luck. What we also see is leadership approving a budget, and they're just like, maybe depending on the size of your budget, they're like, well, we still need to add $200,000 into our budget. And the development people have already, from the beginning, for months, they've fine-tuned, they've added, they've taken out, they've done everything that they feel is possible to present a budget that's supporting programs. And what happens many times is that leadership decides to toss in that $200,000 into individual giving. Oh, we have a year, we'll figure it out. We're going to put this $200,000 into individual giving, which looks great in a budget because, wow, we have a balanced budget. We're good to go. And even though we didn't make the individual giving line because it was floated the year before, and even though there are all these reasons why $200,000 is way too much for us in this time point to raise, we're going to add it. And then what do we do next? No support at all. So then it's up to the development team to all of a sudden have this additional $200,000. And I mean, aside from campaigns and board contributions and galas and foundations and grants, all of that, all of this has to come from a donor base that has never supported an additional $200,000. Now, I'm not saying it can't be done, but what I'm saying is that we have to have a cohesive team where we're all on the same page and we all support each other.
Yeah, we're all singing out of the same hymnal, as my father would say. How do you get to that? So what strikes me is, Dan, your ability to kind of get honest with the fundraising team, the executive staff, and the board, and kind of uncover, like you said, even when first speaking to, a staff of a development team or an executive director, how do you get to that? How do you uncover the layers of the onion and get to that bulb and get to that honesty? Because we have to be honest, right? I mean, like, if we're going to approach people for money, they're going to want to know, and you have to be serious about what product you're selling. So how do you do that? What's your methodology for doing that?
Yeah, for me, Alex, I find that in order to have trust and honesty and transparency, we as nonprofit leaders, we have to look in the mirror a lot and see what we're projecting, what we're bringing to the table. I'm certainly, if I'm working on and an overall team. And I'll give a great example just at BCAP. You know, we had an annual gala, and it was an award ceremony, and it did well, and it took a lot of effort from everybody. And so to say that we're going to raise this amount of money, we're going to have this many people here, and to how do we get there? It obviously, and if it isn't obvious, it has to be obvious that my next door neighbors are not the people who are going to donate $50,000 to an event. It's just not where I live. It's just not my community. However, board members, leadership, people who have supported the organization for a long time have those connections. And not only do they have connections, they have deep-seated relationships with people. And so the transparency and the honesty comes from, we can all do this together. You have strengths, I have strengths, these people have strengths. We can all bring in pieces of the puzzle to make this gala supportive. I mean, not supportive to the organization, but also successful, so that not only do we raise what we want to raise, we continue to build relationships with our donors and with supporters, and quite frankly, with people who have never heard of us, but are attending the event because they're a guest of a donor or supporter. And so just constantly being honest about that. The other thing is to be 100% comfortable with asking for help. I do this a lot. I did this a lot when I was leading development teams, but I do it a lot now. But for example, in nonprofit fundraising, thanking donors is a big important part. And so, Alex, if you and your wife donate $50,000 to us, it's a first-time gift. We just met you. You getting a phone call from me as the head development person is nice, but you don't, it's just me. And I'm not saying anything negative about that. I'm saying that this is where I can ask for help and say to my CEO and to my board chair or other board members, will you take a minute and call Alex and thank him and his wife for their extraordinary gift? Things like that, where I know that in my limited world, I have this much power and this is what I can do. But when we bring others in, there's nothing like, and I've written about this and I talk about this all the time, there's nothing like getting a phone call from a board chair just saying thank you for a donation. It never happens, seldom happens. And when it does happen, especially for people who are heavily involved in philanthropy, when they receive a thank you call from your board chair, whether it's a live call or a message, it changes them, because they know that for years and years and years, they've been philanthropic. They've given maybe millions of dollars, and they've never received a phone call from a board chair to thank them for their gift. So these that goes to me of, okay, what can I do? What impact do I have? And what impact can I possibly not have, but somebody else on my team, the overall team, which includes the board, what can they do to support our fundraising efforts?
That's awesome. What I really like about that is that when you incorporate somebody at a higher level, like a CEO, an executive director, and you get them to do something like a thank you call, and you connect them, it's also going to get their buy-in for what you do, and you're kind of, the value of fundraising. Because sometimes, for whatever reason, we kind of lose the value of fundraising. Well, that team will just go out, kind of what you were saying earlier, that team will just go out and get that money. Well, right. It's going to take everybody's buy-in to understand what's going on with development, because every person can be a revenue generator. There could be an interaction with the executive director or the CEO or somebody that's managing a project that really changes the game. Because I think, somebody that is giving to an organization wants the access to the organization and wants to see the return on investment. So I don't know. I think that's really cool. And I think it gets buy-in from higher level of what you do. So I think that's awesome. let's talk a little bit about relationship fundraising. When I go to your website, when I check on your LinkedIn profile, everything is about fundraising, is about relationships, which I think you say it so much that it's like you're beating people over the head with it, and I like it. But like, I want to know what that means to Dan, and what you kind of uncover with fundraising is about relationships.
Yeah, so for me, and our ultimate theme at Altrui is that fundraising is not about money, it's about relationships. It's on my business card, it's all over our website. I hope it comes up 100 times in conversations with donors. Donors, volunteers, board, I mean, anyone who's a stakeholder in the organization. Because the thing is when we build relationships with our supporters, we know what drives them. If I say our organization makes the world a better place for survivors of domestic violence, or for refugees at the border, or for families who have been devastated by racist acts, or unhoused neighbors, the list goes on and on. You and I are deeply passionate about domestic violence, and I have clients in that realm, and you do that on a daily basis. And so if somebody donates $100 to our organizations, we can just say they can get that automatic email online that says thank you so much. It's really a receipt. And I know, I'll preface this with that not everybody has capacity to have the board be involved in thanking, to be able to start their day with a series of phone calls to everybody who donated the day before, to get thank you letters out within 48 hours. I acknowledge that not everybody has this capacity. And when you're creating your development plan, let's add something to thank donors, to let them know what the impact is, and to hopefully do something that shows them that, one, we got the gift, we got it, thank you so much. Especially if it's like a check. If you receive a check, go ahead and just call the donor and say, hey, I got your check. Just let them know. I know for me, when I and this may be other people, but sometimes when I put something in the mail, it's kind of hit or miss if you're going to get it. But people still send checks in the mail, and they do it a lot. So letting them know just really adds to that level of relationship. And I'm not saying that we want to treat donors in a way where they're saviors, or we can't do anything without them, or their way or the highway. Nothing like that. This is really about pure relationship. That why do you give? For example, at BCAP, we had a donor that hadn't given in a few years when I came on board, but they had given for 3 or 4 years in a row, and then maybe 2 years prior had stopped giving. Very significant gift to the organization. And so, of course, when I'm looking at fundraising and I'm looking at how do we raise more money and so that we can support all of our programs here and do more and serve more, the best way for me to do that is to go into the database for people who used to give, who don't give anymore, right? So I decided to make a phone call to this person. I don't know this person at all. I don't know why they gave. There's no notes on this person at all. And I can't find anybody on the board or staff that knows this person, right? Which is very typical of somebody who donates on an annual basis. Unless you, as the head development person, have brought in the CEO, ED, and board members, nobody is really going to know this person if they're just making an annual donation. They're not attending events. They may not even live where you are, but they fund you on an annual basis. So I called them. Well, first what I did was I played my pump up music because I was a little nervous. I mean, I have no fear in making an ask or making a connection, none at all. But I still was a little nervous. So I play that pump up music, I turn it off, and I hop on the phone. once in a while, when you make a phone call, the person is actually going to answer. And this was the case for this one. And so as soon as they answered, I was like, oh, now I'm on, right? So I introduced myself. Oh, I love BCAP, and we start talking. And then what happens is that you learn that they give every year around the birthday of their brother who died of AIDS, HIV/AIDS 20 years prior, right? Um, and their gift is much more than a major gift. And I had no idea. We don't even know this person, right? Although they give a significant gift every year. So now we know, because you know what I did? I spent 20 minutes talking to them. And by the end of the conversation, they realized that they hadn't donated in a couple of years, because a couple of years just went by like that to them. They didn't it's not that they didn't donate because they didn't want to, because it's not important, because they don't want to continue to memorialize their brother. They just forgot. Life happens, right? It's our job as fundraisers to consistently be in front of donors, to say, in May, we're connecting with donors who typically give in June. And hopefully it's not the only time we connect with them, but we're at least saying, hey, I know your annual gift is typically in June, and here's a link to our impact report. And please let me know if you have any questions, because your support means that we can do this, fill in the blank. And so now after that, I entered all the notes in. I sent a little personal note, because I have the capacity to do this, and I realize that not everybody does. So do you think this person still gives the BCAP? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and for me, it just hit me that all we have to do is reach out to the donors and figure out why they give. And it's fantastic. And donor relationships mean so much more than an annual gift. They mean that you have a fan for life, that if you keep them in the know of what you're doing, which is not difficult to do, even if you don't do an impact report, you can create a list of your portfolio of donors. Let's say you work with 50 or 100 donors, and aside from MailChimp or whatever service you may use, you're not using this, you're using your email, and you just have a list of donors that every month or every quarter you send a group email to about, hey, our program people did this. We took this survivor of domestic violence, got court orders to support them and their children. We were able to be in court with them to ensure that they had legal representation during court. And that means so much to the donor, because they realize they're not just writing $1,000 check, they're supporting legal efforts to save the life and the family of a survivor of domestic violence or sexual assault or domestic abuse. So then we're all on the same page, right? Our employees are changing the world for survivors of domestic violence, and your donation is helping us do that. And so all we really have to do is continue to let donors know that we do this, and it just elevates it. And sometimes it really catapults the relationship. And wow, look at what my big or small donation is doing for people. The other thing I'd like to throw in with this conversation, Alex, is that recently we made a donation for $150. We made it to an organization that we donate to every year, and every year we get a call or a quick note. Thank you so much for this. It's a very small organization doing great work around drug addiction. This year we didn't get, we made our donation about 3 weeks ago, and we didn't get a thank you. Not even an email thank you, nothing. So for me, I realized that, okay, something's going on, because we always get a thank you. I would still give again. What I know for sure with this organization is that $150 is a lot of money to them, and they know it's a lot of money to us. What I'm afraid of is some organizations, especially on the board, look at a person or a family who donates $150 a year and they're non-existent. And I think that I totally get the whole thing around major gifts, and that we want donors, we want to build relationships with donors who can give at a higher level. And for many organizations, especially ones like all of my clients, we spend a lot of time building relationships with those people who are donating $10 a month or $150 a year, because that is our bread and butter of what we do. And it allows us to do so much more for the people we impact.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, a lot to take away from there. I love the fact that you picked up the phone and you called, and you played the pump up music. My mindset on that type of call is like, you've got nothing to lose. This is a plus phone call. Your only objective is to call and thank them. If the conversation leads in other directions, then it leads in other directions. But at least you're calling to thank them, maybe trying to find out why they gave or why they give every year, and kind of taking it from there and understanding their story and just listening to what they're saying, and kind of jotting maybe a few bullet points down or a note down about what's going on with them, and maybe planting the seeds for a possible next action. But you don't have to necessarily do that. Really go in with the mindset of, hey, I'm just going to call to thank this person, to build the relationship, as Dan says, and then kind of, take it from there. And it's so true. You don't know. I mean, obviously a lot of organizations invest in wealth screenings and things like that, but there was some people that I've worked with at organizations where somebody left them in the estate and they did not pop up on the wealth screen. They were just a consistent $25 donor. We didn't know their situation, that they didn't, for whatever reason, have any heirs or anything like that. And they decided to give their entire estate to the nonprofit. Right. So you just don't know. And plus you don't know where people's careers are going to take them, what happens in their lives, and what the nonprofit is doing for them, for their community. And so I think that's really, really cool too. As far as treating every donor, as valuable, I think that's really cool. You mentioned something a little bit about development planning. What's your philosophy on development planning? I think probably, some executive directors are like, oh, I can't understand this. I'm in the weeds and I just need I need a plan. What's your philosophy on development planning? And just take it from there.
Sure. So I spend very little time on development plans. Just kidding. It's a hallmark of what we do at Altrui. And so I think about capacity, because who's going to do it? When you look at, I would say that 80, maybe even 90% of job descriptions for a head of development includes create a development plan or fundraising plan for us, which means they don't have one, right? Because they want you to create it. So they want a brand new person who may be very familiar with their mission, but brand new to them, to their donors, to ways of giving, to structures of foundation grants, to how events are successful. They want a brand new person to all of that to create their fundraising plan, which, because we see it so often, it's just, we've accepted that this is what it is, right? But for me, a development plan can start with, a simple Microsoft Word document right? And so some of my clients, their fiscal year is July 1 to June 30. Some are on a calendar year. So whatever it is, just start breaking down in months, right? Just January through December or July through June. It can be really simple. Now, some nonprofits who have, 15 people on their development team, they have plenty of money. They have somebody who has the capacity who does this particular piece. So it may look like beautiful. I like to do my development plans on a PowerPoint. And for me, not necessarily to present it, but for me, it just works out a lot easier because, I can have a table of contents, I can name my plan, and then each page is one of the items from the table of contents, whether it's direct mail or special events, foundational giving, board support, whatever that is. I find that if you have a plan, you can then incorporate your budget to that. So you have your plan, what all the pieces of the puzzle to get to a successful revenue budget. You just don't have those numbers yet. Then you start plugging those numbers in. And of course, or maybe not even of course, but to me, it's clear that the longer you're at an organization, the easier this is. The day that we begin a new year's development plan is the day that I start planning the next year's development plan. So, direct mail, this direct mail campaign was super successful. This one wasn't. What's the difference? And do we need to do something about that? Our recurring donors, we decided last year that this year we're going to have a campaign to increase recurring donors, whether they're quarterly or monthly. The monthly ones seem to be a better fit for donors. Let's add that into the development plan. Board meetings, and I don't mean the meetings that the board have for them. I mean you as a development team meeting with board members to build relationships with them. Who has the capacity to meet with donors, to personally meet with them? Really, you're just planning all of these things out. All the things that live in our head are planned out. The other thing is, then in your development plan, you're going to have who's accountable for this. And that's where you want to work on your development plan with your team. I've done both. Sometimes I create my development plan and then sit down with the team, including development committee people from the board and who are not on the board. And then we figure out who's going to be accountable for what. I've also created development plans where I had input from my team first and then took that input and included it in the development plan. Either way, whether I work with a lot of people who are executive directors who don't have a development team. But if we can sit down for an hour and they've received all of my bullet points on how we want our development plan to look, we can knock out a good chunk of it. Like it doesn't have to be something that is 27 pages long and that you've put 47 hours of time into. Your very first one can simply match what the revenue sources are on your budget, which you already have. But I think plans are important. We do a lot of development and fundraising plans at Altrui, and I love it. And I especially love when a client is looking for a chief development officer or a head of development, and they don't have to put that line in the job description that we need you to create a development plan for us, because we have one. And you'll actively support that until it's your turn to create your own. But we have one. So come on board, get settled. Here's our plan. We already have it. We're good to go with that. And we'll go from there. So I think it's something that is easy not to do and can be extremely successful when you do it, when you just put a little time and effort into it.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's something that, like you said, it doesn't have to be something that you put a ton of time and energy in, but it's just taking a lot of what you've got up here and putting it down on paper, and then just relaxing because now it's down on paper. We just have to execute it and match it. Like you said, I like what you said, matching the revenue sources that you already have to what can be in the plan, and then putting in some possible additional revenue streams, or building on what you have.
Right.
I want to touch on the job market, what you're currently seeing. Obviously, we went through the pandemic. I think there was a lot of revolutionary kind of work being done with remote work, from the stay-at-home orders. And you flip on the news, and there's this term, the Great Resignation. Are you seeing the Great Resignation in nonprofit employees or in nonprofits that you work with? Has it hit our industry? And then also, you had a really cool blog post about the job search from the candidate's perspective. I think that would be cool to touch on. And then you've been on search committees. What do you look for when you're sitting across from a possible chief development officer or director of development?
Sure. So so during early COVID, there were probably a lot of nonprofit fundraising professionals who were already wanting to leave their position for whatever reason. And then things got really rough. And if they were able to keep their position there for whatever reason, they decided just to stay because they made a personal decision that for the nonprofit, for the mission, it's not a good idea to leave right now because there's just too much going on. And they felt that their need was high there for that position to be filled right then. And so now, where for some people, the world is a little different than it was that first year, people don't feel that way in general anymore. They feel like if now's the time, and maybe even a year ago this started, where okay, I stayed much longer than I wanted to. The issues that are wanting me to leave, or that are in my head on why I want to leave, are still there. So I'm going to leave now because we've gotten through the toughest part of the pandemic. And so you are seeing a lot of people doing that. I don't know if it's to the level of the Great Resignation, but it's pretty high. I mean, you can do a search anywhere and you'll see hundreds of open positions. In LA County, or maybe even all of Southern California, we have a thing called Dan's List. It goes out. It's a free email that we get that's all open nonprofit positions. And there's never a lack of open positions there. And for me, working with clients to find the next chief development officer or individual giving manager or even events person, there's always dozens of people applying for that position. And so I think there's still a lot of fluctuation in the market for nonprofit fundraising people. Now, when I first got into nonprofit fundraising, I was introduced to a woman named Kim Klein out of the Bay Area, although I got to know a little more about her because she was from Boulder, Colorado, where my first position was. And I went to one of her speaking engagements, loved it, just sat there like this, just listening to every word she said. And I bought every book that she ever wrote. And one of the things that she talks about in regards to us, nonprofit fundraising, I almost said consultants, but nonprofit fundraising professionals who are actually at the nonprofit, is that if you just want to leave, okay. She highly recommends that you don't leave unless something ethical is happening, where or unethical is happening, I should say, where your CEO is acting unethical, or there's just no relationship there, or the relationship is so toxic that there's no way that you two can move forward as a team. Or if you're being discriminated against or harassed or any of that, then go ahead and start looking for a job and leave. Or if you've been there for several years and it's just time to leave. But what she explores is, our average that we all talk about is 14 months of staying at which is not a lot, right? It's not a long time. I mean, for me, I need months and months and months just to get settled in.
That's shorter than I expected. 14 months. Wow.
Well, and the book I'm referring to is probably over 10 years old, but I see it every day. I mean, in some institutions, like maybe universities, hospitals, you may see it be longer, but in day-to-day nonprofits. So she really just recommends trying to stay for 2 years, maybe 3, unless it's awful. And she makes it very clear that if it's awful, and awful can look different for all of us, go ahead and leave. But if not, continue to rock and roll, continue to build relationships, continue to be the best chief development officer you can, continue to show up at events, just do everything you can to rock and roll. And then just keep that plan in the back of your mind. So I like that. A lot of us get emails all the time. You and I both get them. Oh, I'm letting you know about this opportunity. We'd love for you to consider this, even though they have no idea who you is. In many cases, they're just sending this to everybody. But the point is that they're, that's what they do. They're recruiters, so they're sending all of these emails out. So there's a lot of positions open right now. Now, the ones that I've sat in, which are several in the past 6 months, but over 2.5 years of Altrui, dozens. The things that I look for right away are if you do a cover letter, which I'm not saying you have to, or if you do an intro email that you're attaching your resume to, just look it over for typos. I mean, I may be old and I may just have lacked the patience of typos, but come on, before word check or spell check or correct spell or whatever, I get it. You're typing and you may have the way this word is spelled is this way, but it's incorrect. But now we have dozens of ways to figure out if a word is spelled correctly or not, or used correctly, really. So just give it a good look. Typos, I mean, I know they happen. I've seen them in, I saw one in a social media post of mine in a blog post, and I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't even catch that. But when you're applying for a job, put your best foot forward. When you get the interview on Zoom, typically on Zoom these days, you may get a 15-minute phone call where somebody is just making sure, yeah, I really like this person on paper, but before we do a Zoom call, I just want to ask a quick few questions. For that one, it's easy. Answer the phone, have a copy of your resume in front of you so that when they ask a question, you have what they're asking is right in front of you. For a Zoom call, the basics: look professional. If I mean, for me, what that means is, just like for this podcast, I washed up, I shaved, I'm dressed nicely. I want to be presentable, right? And number one, actually before that, number one is if you have an 8 o'clock Zoom call, hop in at 7:58, right? Be there when they're, even if they're not on yet, be there. Don't show up at 8:03. I mean, I get it. Life happens. It's just like capacity with nonprofits. Things happen. But you knew a week ago that you had this appointment, right? And you want this job, I'm assuming. And they're not just going to hire you because you look great and sound great and you have an awesome resume. You need to show up. So please just be on time. And for many of us watching this, like for me, I'll be like, well, of course I'm on time. I mean, and for me, it's something built into me, probably from the military, where if you're on time, you're late. But it's not so easy for everybody. So be on time. The other thing is to be really clear that you're applying for this job, but it doesn't mean that you want it. It doesn't mean that if they offer it to you, you're going to take it. You're interviewing them as well, unless it's an organization that you know really well and an organization that you've had on your list, and finally a position is open, and so you want to apply for that. But really figure them out as well. You know, how long was the person before you there? How was the relationship between them and the executive director and the board? How is the executive director? You know, check them out. You're answering to this person. Are they somebody who is going to let you work autonomously, but being there for full support? Are they someone who comes from the fundraising world, which can be helpful, but sometimes not so helpful? Are they somebody who knows nothing about fundraising, and that's why they're hiring this person, because they need somebody who excels in fundraising, who's an expert in nonprofit fundraising and relationship building, to be on their team? And are they going to support you? What is the board like? What is the development committee like? What do the 990s look like? All of these things. So I think it's super important for us as nonprofit fundraising professionals to also remember that we want to make sure that this is going to be a good fit for us, as well as for them. Did that answer your series?
It did. It did. It did. You did. You answered it. Bing, 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 bing. You answered all three. I think my takeaway is the old saying that I had when I first started looking for jobs right out of college was that it was a job to get a job. And I think that's still true in nonprofit world. Mm-hmm. I think that you really do have to do your research about the nonprofit. Like you said, look the 990 up, go to the website, look at the mission statement, look at the visions. Does this align with who you are? Right. And you still have to, the cover letter is still valued in the nonprofit industry for most of the nonprofits that I can see. And so you have to be careful and eloquent and smart about writing a cover letter that has to be honest, because people want to know that you're going to hopefully partially be bought in to the organization and the organization's mission. So right. I think that that's all very valuable and true. I have a couple more questions for you.
Sure.
I wanted to talk about self-care because you're a person that I think I talked to you before, and you said you do I said, Dan, do you meditate? You said you kind of do a meditation thing. I don't know if you said it's like a quote unquote, but you meditate, you take care of yourself so you can be there for other people, for your clients, for your family. So talk to me about just your philosophy on self-care.
Sure. So it's a little different now that I'm with Altrui, because at Altrui, we have very specific policies around self-care. So that's super important, and they should be important in nonprofits. I mean, when you're in fundraising, it's one thing. It's another thing when you're constantly doing program work and you're in the arena every day fighting the good fight. Get away for a 3-day weekend, unplug for 24 hours. A lot of nonprofits offer great vacation holiday time. Take it, take every day. I have worked with people in the past who are like, wow, I'm starting to max out with vacation. And I'm like, really? I'm No, don't max out in your vacation days. Maxing out for vacation days is somebody who's wanting to leave and they want some kind of assurance when they leave that they have some cash in between jobs or whatever. But that's not what the vacation days are for.
You're talking about carrying the bank, your vacation bank,
exactly
for a long time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Take your vacation.
Don't accrue so many vacation days that somebody at the nonprofit is saying, hey, you have to use days. If you have a family, go on vacation with them. If you don't have a family, go visit family. If you want to just take off and fly to Dublin or Santa Marta, Colombia, or the beaches in Tunisia, wherever you want to go, just go. But go, unplug, take care of yourself, eat a mango on the beach, or just do something to take care of you, because at the end of the day.
Yeah, I love how specific you are. Every time I talk to you, you're like, go eat a mango on the beach. I think we were in a call the other day and you were like, eat a vegan taco and have I can't remember the drink that you said. It was just so specific.
And agua fresca, yeah. Yeah, definitely. I mean, the thing is that the people that we serve at our nonprofits, whether it's our unhoused neighbors or survivors of domestic violence, refugees at the border, severely abused animals, all of these folks are relying on us. And so we have to bring it, right? And we can't bring it 24/7 if we're not taking care of ourselves, if we're not taking a break. And in leadership, as nonprofit leaders, we have to talk about this, like take vacation. So for nonprofit fundraisers, for many of us, the summer slows down a bit. So why not look at taking, every July, take 3 weeks off, or take your 2 weeks off, or whatever, but you just plan it so that your donors become familiar with you being gone for a couple weeks. The program people know you're gone for a couple weeks. Every July, it's just what happens. But plan this time, take it off. My last job in nonprofit fundraising was for Casa of Los Angeles, and they had a very supportive policy around vacation time. But they also, because they were located in a courthouse, which was closed over the Christmas holiday, they gave the team the whole week in between Christmas and New Year's off as a paid, which is fantastic. Now, us in fundraising, we work that week. It can be a busy week, but so we took the next week off, paid. And so these are things that nonprofits can do to make sure that they're actually walking the talk around self-care. And I find it very, very important to do this. And I want to be part of that when I'm working with clients on development plans, on any type of appeals, on galas, making sure that as all of these big ticket items are happening, that we're taking care of the team before, during, and after.
Absolutely. We're not immune to, obviously we're not immune to stress, but we're not immune to, I think, some of the trauma that we might see in specifically sometimes in our clients, and the clients that and it echoes throughout the organization. So taking time, doing a check-in, even if it's daily, I just think it's so important, because we have to treat each other internally well, because I think that's gonna, pass on to the donors, to the volunteers, and to the clients that we serve. So yeah, I think it's so important, and I want to continue to talk about it, and I'm lifted up.
I'm a little passionate about it.
I know, I can tell. Dan, one of the things I read on because I did a little bit of research, and I know you, but you eloquently put on your LinkedIn profile that you focus on nonprofits serving populations that include the unheard, the forgotten, and the invisible. why focus your work on that, and why do you care about this type of area? Because nonprofits cover so many areas.
Yeah, definitely. So that I've changed that from time to time, but I think how it is now, people who don't know me will at least get the gist. For me, we used to use terminology, I want to help the voiceless. But and that term itself has grown and altered a bit, because even if when you're talking about animals, animal rights, animal welfare, sure, animals are definitely voiceless, right? They just don't have that. But when you're talking about human beings, it's a little different. An unhoused person does have a voice. It's just that maybe we're not listening to it. But what I have now on LinkedIn is what my heart's passion is for. And I think it's just based on life experience. I have a very good life. And for the most part, I've had an amazing life. I've never really gone without. Even when I did not have a house, when I did, when I left home at an earlier age, I couch surfed and I did whatever I needed to do to survive. But even then, I still was going to school. I still had access to food, to a shower, to a community that embraced me and supported me. And I think that there are people and animals, from my perspective, that are in a life-altering situation that they don't want to be in. You and I see this every day in domestic violence. Nobody marries somebody thinking that in a couple years they're going to be abused, or in some cases killed, by their spouse or partner. And it happens so often. We can just do a Google search on that. And so if Altrui is going to work with nonprofits, which is what we do, we really want to be picky and choosy on the ones we work with, because there are a lot of nonprofits that are doing well and that have amazing missions. But when you're a small shop like we are, you really have to pick and choose what type of client you're going to work with. And so we work with clients who are serving refugees at the border. We work with clients who serve our unhoused neighbors. We serve with clients who serve animals that have just been abused to the point where they're almost dead, and in many cases they don't make it. I'm in my household and in my family, we're vegan, so we work with clients that promote veganism or that want to come close to veganism and environmentalism, things like that. And those are just personal passions of mine. Some of them are because of my life experience, and some of them are because the life experience of people that I love, who were affected in some way or another in these realms. And I tell you, there are, for whatever passion you as an individual pick, or a series of passions, there is a nonprofit out there that is rocking it in that passion. And you have an ability, no matter what, how much money you make, no matter what you do as employment, you have an opportunity to support that mission. And I frequently say, and I write about it in the blog, your favorite nonprofit still needs you. And so whatever your favorite nonprofit is, when was the last time you donated? When was the last time you volunteered? When was the last time you went to their needs list and shipped them some, for organizations that serve our unhoused neighbors, underwear, socks, those kind of things, just constantly they need. But go to your favorite nonprofit's wish list. If you are a nonprofit and you don't have a wish list, consider putting a wish list on your website. So folks who may not want to make a donation right now, may not want to attend an event, can hop on there and ship you a few items. I could go on and on about this, but I think for us at Altrui, we absolutely love the missions of every client we have. And we are intensely grateful that they entrust us to help them build deeper relationships with their donors. So that affects their fundraising, so that then they can make the world a better place for whoever they're serving. Did that answer your question, Alex?
That did. You rocked it. I appreciate it. Dan Hanley, you're the relationship fundraiser. I'm so glad to have you in my life. Stealing that's your line. You say that to me. So, you're rocking it. And yeah, I just appreciate it. I'm going to link Dan's website and his Twitter and his LinkedIn in the clips. And Dan, thanks so much for talking to me.
Thank you, Alex. It was a pleasure. Thank you so much.
All right.